Hello, and welcome to another episode of KDAB Insights. As part of our outreach to partners to get insights on different aspects of the world of software development, Francis Tate from KDAB talked to Burkhard Stubert about his mission to free smart machines from dumb user interfaces one machine at a time. You join us now as Francis begins by asking him to describe the difference between a dumb and smart user interface.
Yeah, it's, I think, pretty simple to answer. So, well, I would say in the olden times, you had these big cupboards with a lot of buttons and switches and gauges, and the controllers would press buttons and look at the gauges and see, okay, yeah, now I have to do this, turn this knob or so. It's a bit like in an airplane cockpit. And nowadays, this is all on a touch screen. So you have nice buttons, and they are structured nicely. But still, the main work must be done by the operator or by the driver of a harvester. So they have to look out of the window and see, okay, these sugar beets are beheaded, so they leak sugar actually. Then what do I have to do? Okay, I have to cut them a little bit higher, so I have to press this knob so that the knives go up. Or, oh, there are a lot of sugar beets left in the ground, so it's not digging deep enough. And so, okay, which knob do I have to turn? That one here, and dig a little bit deeper. And that's all. So it's the driver is the main sensor, something like a sensor in the car, the intelligent sensor, and he must look out of the window. He must look on his instruments and see, okay, now I must take action. And what is it that I have to do? Okay, I have basically to program the machine, turn some knobs, press some buttons, and so on, all on a touchscreen these days. And then then control it. Yep, that looks okay. All the roots are coming out. They are not beheaded and so on. And this is a dumb interface. It forces the user to do all these things. So these drivers on a harvester, they are badly paid. They have to work 14, 16 hours on end. And they do that, say, 6 weeks in the year, and then they come back the next year, hopefully, or they are fresh ones, and so they don't remember it. So there's no motivation for them to remember that. If you have, say, the owners, the farmers sitting on the machine and doing the harvest, they are really motivated, and they are typically extremely good at it. They know exactly what to do. And it is these things you must automate. So that is actually, I would say, that's why I say these are dumb user interfaces, because they always let the driver or the user or the operator figure out, okay, in this situation, I must do that and that.
And given that we're living in a world where it's very unlikely that they're suddenly going to pay these poor, badly paid workers better and give them some motivation to do a better job. What you're suggesting, I think, is that the expertise that the farmers have needs to be somehow translated into the machine. And that's what a smart user interface is. Is that right?
That's exactly what a smart user interface is. So you must sit with the drivers. You must understand their work. And you better sit with the expert users and learn how do they solve the problems. And you also sit with the beginners, the not so expert users, to figure out where do they have problems, why do they have that problem. And when you understand that, then you start thinking about how can my user interface solve this problem. Which information is missing? There's often some information missing. Say, say a camera trained on the sugar beets, for example, and which could automatically figure out, okay, it's cut too low, cut too high, too much leaves there. So that's missing, and that's what the user interface developers, designers, what and some expert has to figure out.
Does it mean that basically a chimpanzee could drive the harvester?
No. I think we see that in with autonomous cars. So I think we were promised autonomous cars. What is it? 5 years ago now, or 2 years ago, and they are still far away, and we won't see them. So we can get to a certain point of automation, but in critical situations, it's the user who must decide what to do. And so no, a chimpanzee will have problems, and there are always situations you can't foresee. And that's actually what keeps the autonomous cars back. There are situations like they don't like snow, for example. Then they don't see the line at the side of the road anymore, or in the middle of the road markings. So they are lost, or just heavy rain, or well, there are so many unforeseen situations in traffic. That's when you need a human being who can say in a new situation or unusual situation, okay, that's what we should do here. And so, yeah, humans will be needed in the end at some point. You can only get so far, but then you should, of course, analyze this situation. Why did the driver have to intervene here? And maybe you can automate that, or at least warn about the situation. So that's then the handover point in say in autonomous driving, where the car must say, hopefully well in advance, hey, I don't know what to do.
Wake up
and do something.
Stop watching that video.
And wake up quickly. Yeah, so that is so there is always space. So it's relieving users from the boring tasks. If you can automate things, that's the boring stuff. It's I'm just working or starting a project on continuous delivery. So teaching a company continuous delivery, so DevOps in the end. And one of the principles of continuous delivery is automate the boring stuff. Everything the computer can do, automate that. People or humans are for doing the creative stuff.
I have to ask this, Burkhard. I know you're probably going to answer what the answer probably will be, but you've been a long time a user of Qt. So you must have been using Qt to do most of these projects. Is that right? I mean, where does it come in, and why is it so good at it?
Yes, that's absolutely true. So I've been using Qt for now 23 years. And I've used it in every embedded project I've done so far, in a couple of harvester terminals, an infotainment system, metal sheet bending machines, so it's doing metal origami, and professional professional appliances and so on. So it was always Qt, and on embedded devices, I don't see a better choice than Qt. It's that technology you should use. It gets the job done. It saves you a lot of time. So it provides you a lot of ready-made components. Just think of say CAN bus communication or MQTT communication. Yeah, there are libraries, they are very well tested, they are very well maintained, and you can just use them. You don't have to re-implement that stuff or implement it yourself and then maintain it yourself. And that's true for most of the things you need on embedded systems. So it's just there, just use it.
You kind of hint about what it is that might, how companies should invest for the future. I'm just wondering what you see as the biggest challenge when you're trying to, as it were, convert these companies. Tell them, why don't they do it? Why don't they spend the money they should spend on making sure that they make the right choices in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess that's a question or with the answer of this question, companies like yours, like KTAB or me, are earning their living. So when they need to, so they ran their project against the wall after 2, 3, 5 years, and then they need the cavalry to come in. It's sad to see that. So, but in my mission statement, I have the example of the sugar beet harvesters. A sugar beet harvester costs $500,000, and the other harvesters are not much cheaper. And the terminal, just the terminal, costs 1,500 euros. Typically there are 2 insides, so you're talking about 3,000 euros for the terminals. And I've seen many manufacturers negotiate hard to get, say, 3% from these 3,000 euros. So what for in a 500,000 euro machine? It's the wrong priorities. They don't say where they can save the money, and even they could. Yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of persuasion. It's a lot of persuasion or education is the right word. There's a lot of education to do where you really can save the money. Some are open, understand. So if they invest a little bit more on their system on chip, on their hardware platform, say they don't take the very cheapest processor, like say at the moment an IMX6 is all the rage. Why not take an IMX8 at the moment? Which will get you through the whole lifetime of your machine, which will be powerful enough to get you through the next 10 to 15 years without changing the hardware platform. And then you can invest in that. You pay what, 50 to 100 euros more, and you have a really powerful computer in your terminal, and which lives for 10 to 15 years. That's what you have to educate the people about. It's tough. Some understand it, some don't, and many companies are just focused on costs. They do not look at the opportunity. So that is the thing. They are afraid of doing that, and it's a risk, yes. But risk also means opportunity, more value, more return on investment. And if you don't take any risks, well, you will eventually you will go down, or you will go out of business. And there's an excellent example with Tesla, and they took on a lot of risk. They actually built a car like you would build software, and they one of the cleverest things they did right at the beginning was to put a really powerful computer, a supercomputer, into their cars. And this supercomputer took over the functionality of normally you have something like 50 to 80 electronic control units in a car. So 50 to 80 other computers, other embedded systems in the car. They used one supercomputer, which replaced most of them. So they have something like 10 to 12 ECUs left in the car. The rest is done on one computer. And suddenly you turn a hardware problem into a software problem. Then you don't have to talk between different computers in the car, but you just talk on the same computer between different processors. And the best side effect is, well, updates become pretty simple. You don't have to update 80 computers anymore over a very slow network, actually. you can do it with on one computer basically, or say on 10, where the other 10 typically don't need many updates. That's simple things which rarely need an update. So it's a huge advantage. Tesla can do software updates like you know it from a computer, and try that. Well, with my BMW, I have to drive to the garage to get my maps updated, to get the software of some ECUs updated, and pay a lot of money. So, and that's the state of art for the others. And Tesla did it. By now they are designing their own supercomputer, so they do the hardware design themselves, and they are years ahead of the competition.
You've made it a lot clearer, and maybe part of what this video perhaps will help to do is to tell that story to the kinds of people that you know need to hear it.
I think what is important with Tesla, they have the control over their own fate.
Yes.
And that's what machine manufacturers should have as well. They should control their own fate. And that also means they should do the work in the end. They should do that work themselves. They shouldn't outsource the work. They shouldn't outsource building the whole system. They must eventually do that themselves. Otherwise, they will always rely on some vendors and say, "Oh, could you please fix this problem?" "Oh, sorry, I don't have time now, so it will take 2 weeks until we can fix that." Hey, this harvester is standing still. That is the worst case that can happen in a harvest. They must not stand still. That's the ultimate thing. They must not stand still. And this supplier tells them, "Oh, sorry, we'll look at this half an hour fix in 2 weeks. Thank you." You can't do business with that. You lose customers.
So part of your mission statement is to do yourself out of a job by getting all these people to learn how to do it themselves, kind of, except there's so many of them that you never will do yourself out of a job. Is that the story?
Yes, actually, that's what I'm typically telling my customers in the beginning. Well, I do a good job if I'm if I'm superfluous at the end. If you need me for the next 5 or 10 years, I've done something wrong, and you as well. So it's always important for me to build up the expertise in-house, teach people how to do it.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about your mission that we haven't covered?
What I often say is it's junior people who do the user interface. Well, it may be okay for, say, really if there is a UI design and they just have to implement some very thin QML layer, that's okay. But for the whole system, you need some really experienced people who can think the whole thing together, and the systems are pretty complex. That's nothing a junior person should do, and even many senior people will struggle with that. And I'm always surprised. My customers often, they have other cheap freelancers working for them, or from some rental agencies, these body leases, and they are surprised that doesn't work. Well, it can't work. If you buy cheap, you will get cheap, and that's something you shouldn't do. Better invest a little bit upfront, and then take over that, and the costs will amortize. Because in the end, if you hire a lot of cheap people, it's guaranteed that after 2 or 3 years, the whole thing will explode, and you know that as well. So then they call for the cavalry. Kate, hey, or Burkhard, come in.
And you have to rewrite all the code, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's often the best thing to do. Throw it away, or I'm just starting on a project where we have to decide with 1 million lines of legacy code what to do, and so which parts to throw away, which parts to put under test, or which parts to rewrite, put behind an interface and forget it. So yeah, that will be an interesting project. But that's pretty typical. So a lot of people not using proper software development practices, writing software without tests for a couple of years, and you have a catastrophe.
That's a whole other conversation, isn't it? We could certainly have another whole other conversation about the security and all the safety issues and so forth, which are just terrifying when you think about the cheap solutions that people sometimes go for. We better stop that there, I would think. Otherwise, we're going to be able to talk forever. I think you and I.
Wouldn't mind.
It's fun. It's been fun. I mean, perhaps we can come back and visit this again sometime. Thank you, Burkhard.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
It's been most interesting. And let's do this again sometime.
I hope so.
Take care.